Hey everyone, Brian here. When I arrived at college, one of the things that I was encouraged to sign up for was intramural sports. In the past, a charismatic individual formed a team through sheer determination and marched them on to glory. But the college had changed the rules. Only students from the same dorm and of the same grade could form a team. So, a bunch of us freshmen sat down in the dorm lounge staring at each other. After a long time, someone said, "Well, what should our name be?" Hours went by as we shared ideas and stories of our lives until we came to two decisions. Number one, we would be a team, and number two, our name would be the Horse-Feathered Moose Cows. To this day, none of us could really tell you where the name came from, but I can tell you what it did. 4 years, multiple seasons full of victories and losses later, the Moose Cows stuck through thick and thin. Many of us are still in touch today. But it wasn't just the name, it was everything behind the name. The hours of time that we shared living in the same somewhat broken down dorm, sharing the same conversation about being too tired to go to practice and then dragging each other to practice. Late night studying, complaining about the same professors, attempting to cook something other than ramen noodles. We developed a culture together, and many of us continued to request the same dorm so we could continue the team. Why? Well, we weren't just a bunch of guys. We were the Horse-Feathered Moose Cow Nation. 19th century Europe was in a similar spot. The rules had changed, and many were beginning to form new teams with new names based upon a whole new way of looking at the world. That new way of looking at things? Nationalism. To explore the impacts of nationalism, let's use these guiding questions. How did nationalism both unite and divide peoples in Europe? What positives and negatives were brought about by nationalist movements? And a big picture question for us to think about: what connects people within a nation? Let's begin with a refresher. Head to your lesson preview and see if you can remember what nationalism is. Nationalism, or promoting national interests, can be a powerful force for connection. After all, if you have a similar cultural background, then you tend to think along the same lines. You'll see in future lessons that both popular movements and authoritarian leaders all wanted to utilize the idea of a united people charting their own destiny. However, remember that there's more to the definition of nationalism. Promoting national interests can often include even to the exclusion or detriment of other people and nations. As we'll also see, many leaders didn't utilize as much as exploit people's feelings to set up the idea of us versus them. As we look at the three types of nationalist movements, be on the lookout for ways in which people could use this type of movement to bring everyone together, and how an autocratic leader could use it to build their own power base. Unification, or bringing politically divided but culturally similar peoples together, is exactly what happened with the states we think of today as Germany and Italy. In 1866, Prussia, an area on the southeast Baltic Sea, defeated Austria in the Austro-Prussian War. This gained Prussia 21 smaller states, who, seeing the advantage of being connected to a larger power, declared Wilhelm I of Prussia their emperor in 1871. Italy also came together in 1871 when revolutionaries sponsored by intellectual clubs took Rome and proclaimed it the capital of the new Republic of Italy. The peoples of these new states had linguistic and cultural connections with each other and all identified with the land that became their country. This created two new nationalist identities. Head to your lesson guide and jot down what you've learned about how nationalism can unify people. Don't forget to include an example. Separation, or declaring your people different enough to want to break away from others, is probably the most important feature for you to remember as we head towards a world war. The Ottoman Empire had maintained a nationalist identity with most of its policies for hundreds of years. The empire was home to many peoples, but only Turks were full citizens of the empire, and with citizenship came privileges that everyone else didn't have. This didn't sit well with the Greek people, who, through a growing Enlightenment movement, had begun to create a national identity spanning back to the ancient Greek city-states. Bound by this growing sense of nationalistic pride and the lack of connection or care by the Ottomans, a series of revolts began in Greece in 1821. Greece became independent in 1830. Head to your lesson guide and jot down what you've learned about how nationalism can be a tool for separation. Don't forget to include an example. For state building, which is using a people's nationalistic beliefs to create a new state, let's return to the Austrian Empire again. Besides Germans and Italians, which you knew about from before, the Austrian Empire contained a myriad of ethnic groups within their borders. After the same war that created a unified Germany, another of those groups, Hungarian peoples, wanted to have a word with Austria. Hungary argued for the creation of a new semi-autonomous or mostly self-governing state called, you guessed it, Hungary. This new state would run its own affairs but acknowledge the magnificently sideburned Franz Joseph I of Austria as their leader. This allowance would result in 40 years of separatist movements and revolts in the newly named Austro-Hungarian Empire. One of these separatist movements would be at least one big match that lit the fuse of World War I and would eventually result in the splintering of the empire afterwards. So, stay tuned for that. Head to your lesson guide and jot down what you've learned about how nationalism fueled the idea of state building. Don't forget to include an example. Let's talk about the other half of our guiding question, division. You may be thinking to yourself, wait, haven't we talked about division already? Well, with Germany and Greece, nationalism was used to bring people together, uniting them under a common culture and goal. Nationalism can also make existing divisions so very much worse, especially when the concept of national pride and connection aren't really understood by those in power. Let's return to the Ottomans. After losing Greece, the empire cracked down on the freedoms of minorities under its rule and refused to grant citizenship to anyone not of Turkish origin. So, how do you think that was going to work? Yeah, not well. This move prompted other minority groups to push for recognition and independence. The empire's own nationalistic feelings about Turkish culture would lead to vicious backlashes against minorities, particularly against the Armenian population. 2 recorded genocide events occurred in 1894 and 1915. Spoiler alert, like Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire would tear apart in the wake of nationalist sentiment from its former subjects. Head to your lesson guide and briefly discuss how nationalism in the Ottoman Empire served to further divide people. Russia also misunderstood this wave of nationalism. The Romanov dynasty was the tail end of 380 years of Tsarist rule. As with the others, their Russian Empire contained sizable minorities of Ukrainian and Polish peoples, along with at least 9 other ethnic groups. The Tsarist regime had, in the past, not cared too deeply about the people they ruled. As a result, many of these groups had maintained or developed strong cultural and national ideals. As we've seen already, when people you rule don't think you should rule them anymore, it tends to create problems. Russia had a brilliant solution: make everyone Russian. Called Russification, the Tsarist government attempted to push Russian culture into all corners of the empire. They stopped the printing of languages other than Russian, only taught Russian in their schools, and enforced Russian names for places and government positions. This process backfired spectacularly. When you push people with their own identity to adopt another identity so that the ruling people group can further control you, it predictably reinforces everyone's feelings about their own people. This growing disunity eventually blew Russia itself apart with a populist revolution in March 1917 and then another in October 1917. Let's return to our guiding question. How did nationalism both unite and divide peoples in Europe? Use the notes you've jotted down to answer. With all of this societal and governmental turnover, what were the overall positives and negatives of this new nationalist movement? Nationalism as an idea would shape many smaller principalities into single-minded modern entities on the world stage. While many of these new nations would turn their minds to conquest of others, just as many would turn to oppose them. Uniting for a common good is definitely a positive. Remember all the colonial revolutions we've talked about? These were due in part to the idea of being connected with the people who lived around you. While not always very certain and more often than not experiencing quite a few nasty bumps along the way, the overthrow of colonial powers for local control is most definitely a positive nationalistic trend. Additionally, when thinking about the English, American, French, and Latin American revolutions, many of them prompted the creation of more democratic forms of government. If the country you broke away from hasn't given you a voice, you tend to want to reverse that when you're on your own. Democracy over autocracy definitely checks the positive box, right? Now for the negatives. Just because a minority group throws off their overlords, it doesn't mean that they won't fall into the us versus them trap as well. From the mid-18th century through to the modern era, those who were liberated from a colonial power would then go on to persecute others beneath them. This persecution of others can then lead to cleansings and genocides. The Ottomans' ethnic cleansing of Armenians is unfortunately far from the last time we'll see one group attempt to eliminate another. Nationalism tends to make people feel really good about themselves, but it can lead to also believing that everyone else is just the worst. And as we've already seen, when rival teams each think they're the best, it can cause tense rivalries on the court, field, or pitch. When we're discussing countries, that field is often called a battlefield, and the cost isn't points, it's lives. To wrap up, head to your lesson guide and fill in the chart under your guiding question. What positives and negatives were brought about by nationalist movements? Nationalism is a complicated and controversial idea. It has brought millions together, united in common purpose. It has also caused some of the greatest human tragedies in recorded history. As we continue through the rise of a different way of thinking about governance, people, and their place in it, keep both positives and negatives in mind. Good, bad, or uncertain, let's explore what all the other nationalist, horse-feathered moose cows are going to do. Because of course, history is everywhere.